G'day Guardians, it's Matt here, and today I have a really fun Solar Titan build to share with you. Even though Void 3.0 is what everyone is cheering about ever since Witch Queen dropped, this has actually been my favourite way to play Titan this season. I've actually been sitting on this script for about 2 weeks now. I've really struggled to convey just how much I love playing this build, especially in the current YouTube meta, where it feels like every build that you happen to see is either the best Hunter build in PVE or, the absolute best Void Warlock build possible. And I really hate throwing the word best around when it comes to builds because the Destiny 2 meta and sandbox are constantly changing, and obviously where it's considered the best is just opinion based, but I do want to instill a bit of confidence and say, to me, this feels like the best Solar Titan build that I've played in probably a good year or so. We saw a lot of success from my Ash and Wake build last year, which a lot of people seem to really enjoy, and this build today honestly demolishes it in my opinion. If you're a fan of burning everything to death, being jacked up on multiple different damage buffs, and having our good old Warmind Cell friends back in action and being viable again, this build is going to be for you. I'm going to be very transparent here. This build is very easy to maneuver, you don't need to string a whole lot together, and you'll feel a lot of its effects from just playing the game naturally, which is personally my favorite kind of build. While this build absolutely excels in low-end content like strikes, gambit, or even just running raids on normal difficulty, I am excited to tell you that this build can and will do some serious work in endgame activities too. If you've become familiar with some of the Grandmaster Nightfalls in rotation, you'll be able to utilize some of this build's functions, especially with Arms Dealer having that 25% solar burn throughout. Or another case where this build excels is if you're defending in the first encounter in Vow of the Disciple on Master difficulty even, or if you're trying to do some serious ad clearing in Exhibition encounter also. But before we dive into this build today, I wanted to let you all know two very exciting things. Roguey and I have officially set up a Piñata Pals Discord server. We've seen a few comments sprinkled over the last few videos we've made asking about one, so it's finally here. It's our first time ever managing a server, so we're still a little bit new to it. It's definitely a little bit naked at the moment, so we'll try and keep our eye out for some suggestions and maybe even some moderators down the track as well. The other thing is that we're giving away 2 emblem codes, a Follow the Light emblem code courtesy of the ANZ team over at Destiny 2, as well as an Archive of Light emblem code as well. The 2 winners can fight till death over which one gets which. I will be picking 2 winners in a week's time, so check the description for the exact time. But here's the catch. If you want a chance at winning either code, I'll be picking one person who comments on this video with their favorite solar weapon this season, as long as they're subbed to the channel. And I'll be picking the other person from someone who joins our Discord server and is obviously subbed to the channel as well. So if you want a chance at these codes, that's all you got to do. Either comment on the video or join the Discord server. Alright, so let's jump into the build. For the subclass, we're running Middle Tree Solar, and that's mostly for this guy here, the Throwing Hammer. You're allowed to just throw this bad boy and you can run over and pick it up without having any sort of cooldown. It's fantastic and works wonders for activating some of the mods and perks within this build. And it also synergizes really nicely with the other subclass perk here, Roaring Flames. After 3 hammer kills, or if you get 3 grenade kills, you'll successfully have gotten 3 stacks of Roaring Flames, meaning your hammer, your grenade, or even your super will do some serious damage. For the grenade, I do recommend the Thermite grenade as it has the potential to kill a lot of adds with its path blocking capabilities. For the exotic armor piece, we are running Path of Burning Steps, which can be unlocked through Legend or Master solo lost sectors. Path of Burning Steps provides a damage buff that can be stacked up to 4 times, and when you have 4 stacks of its Firewalker buff, it provides a 35% damage buff to all solar weapons. It also makes you harder to freeze or slow from stasis, which comes in really handy if you're tackling the Glassway Grandmaster this season. The idea with this exotic is that we're using solar weapons, and those weapon kills will keep our damage buff rolling. As for weapons that I recommend using with this build, don't look past Explosive Personality, one of the craftable weapons from this season. If you've got the pattern for it, I would shape one with Feeding Frenzy and Frenzy, since both perks enhance its reload speed, and Frenzy giving you a nice 15% damage buff on top of what Path of Burning Steps gives also. If you've got a kinetic weapon with Frenzy also, then this synergizes really well. Currently, I'm still rocking Extraordinary Rendition with Overflow Frenzy, since Overflow is usually active because we're mostly using Explosive Personality and the Frenzy buff carries over between weapons. If you haven't got yourself a nice Explosive Personality yet, you can always use Dead Messenger and flick it over to the Solar Affinity, which works equally as well. For me personally, I like to keep Gjallarhorn on though, which occupies my exotic slot, and when the damage buffs start rolling through, it makes this monster feel even more lethal. Alright, now it's time for the good stuff, the mods. First off the rank is our helmet, and you'll want to have double grenade launcher ammo finders on since we're only really using our explosive personality. No ammo means this build ain't gonna work. On the combat slot, you'll want Wrath of Rasputin, which will allow our explosive personality, our thermite grenade, and Galahorn to all generate Warmind cells for us. On our legs, we're keeping it nice and simple. A grenade launcher scav mod to feed us extra ammo from each brick, and Rage of the Warmind to make our Warmind cells do a lot more solar damage when they explode. On the chest piece, we're taking advantage of the Seasonal Artifact mod, running 2 copies of Thermoshock plating, as well as Global Reach, which makes our Warmind cell explosion radius a lot bigger. On our arms, we have Melee Wellmaker, which means our hammer will generate a solar elemental well every time we get a kill with it. Even though Feeding Frenzy and Frenzy speeds up our reload speed on explosive personality, it doesn't hurt to chuck on 2 reloader mods to help us speed up the process. Obviously, in harder content, they will just be swapped out for champion mods, or if you do have some Artifice armor, one could be tacked onto the end there. And lastly, on our mark, with the elemental well that we're creating, collecting it will proc Font of Might, which provides us with a 25% damage buff to solar weapons for 10 seconds, which unbelievably stacks with the Path of Burning Steps' 35% damage buff and the Frenzy 15% damage buff also, turning your solar weapons into monsters that melt. We've also got one of the seasonal mods, Inferno Whip, which means our hammer throw can stun unstoppable champions, which is really nice when we're entering endgame activities. Lastly is 1-2 finisher, which gives us a complete refund of our hammer throw if we get a finisher. This one is useful in case we throw our hammer off the map, or if you just flat out can't get over to it in time and it just despawns. All you'll have to do is just finish an enemy and then you'll be refunded all of the energy so that you can use it again. Alright, so we've covered the main weapon to use and how the mods work, but now it's time to learn how this build actually plays out. When entering a fight, try to score a kill with your hammer first. This will activate the 25% damage buff from Font of Might. It's not the end of the world if you forget, but the buff does only last 10 seconds, so try to have that in the back of your mind. The hammer kills will become extremely easy as you build up your Roaring Flame stacks as well. Throw your grenade whenever you see plenty of ads, or if they're just spawning in, or if there's some sort of doorway choke point like when you're defending the Wellspring. Other than that, it's just using your explosive personality to kill everything. Every few kills you'll be generating a Warmind cell, and you'll be wanting to switch to your kinetic weapon to pop those because of this one very cool reason. Warmind cell kills feed your Path of Burning Steps Firewalker buff. Between your explosive personality shredding everything and your Warmind cells blowing everything up, you'll be able to keep your Firewalker buff constantly refreshed and active, making this build super deadly. When you get the ball rolling, no doubt you'll have Frenzy procced for extra damage, and all you'll need to remember is just throw your hammer in the mix to get that extra Font of Might damage. Not only will you be melting yellow bars with just one shot of the wave frame, but you'll be able to do some serious boss DPS as well, and even take down champions too. Alright, it's time to look at the stats that you want to be speccing into with this build. If you've ever watched any of my previous builds, you know that I'm a huge sucker for 100 recovery, so that's a given here. But the only other thing that I think you should try to potentially max out is your discipline. Our grenade is a source of creating Warmind cells through the Wrath of Rasputin mod, and Warmind cell explosion kills refresh our Path of Burning Step damage buff. Not only that, but we don't really need to care about any of the other stats anyway. We don't need to have strength because we can just pick our hammer up for an instant refresh, and if we do happen to lose it, we can just finish an enemy to get it back, and we don't really need mobility because, well, what even is mobility on a Titan? If you have any spare stats to distribute out, feel free to dump them into Resilience or Intellect. Either can be pretty useful depending on your playstyle. Now, I don't normally do this in my build videos, but I'd like to offer some alternatives to this build in case you're missing certain parts of it. I believe when you make a build, it holds a certain level of identity, and when you start chopping and changing parts, it can lose its style or its intent. But I am all for accessibility, and if you're missing certain mods, exotics, or weapons, then here's some suggestions to make this build work in a very similar fashion. If this little section of the video is helpful to you, I'd like to hear it in the comments so that I know whether or not to do this in my future videos as well. Firstly, if you don't have Path of Burning Steps yet, that's fine. Maybe you're underleveled and those solo lost sectors are a little bit tricky. Instead, I would recommend Hallowfire Heart, which causes your abilities to recharge super fast if you don't use your super. Middle Tree Super isn't too flashy, so it's fine to leave it up and get those grenades back quickly, although of course you will lose out on the 35% damage buff that Path of Burning Steps provides, but I think Hellfire Heart provides good synergy as a replacement regardless. As for a weapon replacement, I did mention Dead Messenger, but obviously this build feels incredible with Explosive Personality, and the fact that you can even better it with enhanced perks is great. But you could also swap it out for something like Empty Vessel, which is a Vanguard drop. It also provides Warmind cells. It is fairly underwhelming in comparison, but it is an alternative. For an exotic weapon, if you don't want to run something like Galahorn or Dead Messenger, you could switch to any kind of solar rocket launcher, and you could pair this with something like Sunshot, where both alternatives can make Warmind cells as well. But that's everything from me, guys. Hopefully you've got yourself a new favorite build to play around with. It's honestly a ton of fun, and I think it's probably what I'll finish the season off with as well. I'll put a dim link in the description so that you can easily import it into your loadouts as well. Don't forget to enter the giveaway for the 2 emblem codes for a chance at both. Just comment on this video and join the Discord server, or do one of those 2 things for a chance at one of them. Don't forget to subscribe and drop this video a like if it helped you out at all. It'll help Roguey and I sneak our way into the YouTube algorithm to help more of our Titan brethren and sisters out. As always, take it easy, Guardians.